Hello, everyone. Um, Today we are going to start our journey with some practical uh, topics that we are going to learn in Spark as well as SQL. I think that's the second slide. Let's first discuss if we can do if yeah. So how are we going to actually start our journey? We are starting our journey with the selection of the data, because you will be surprised, especially in the data and analytics. Most of the work we normally produce in the business, most of the requirements come to retrieve the data set from different sources. And even once we are inserting the data, these data sets are already available in the databases, or even now with the introduction of data lakes, the lake house has been built, and the data files are present there. All we need to set up the efficient select statements, which can help us to retrieve that data. So that's why I thought it would be better for us to start our journey from the select statement. And most of the books that you're going to see in the market, some really good books, they are focusing more on the selection and on the scripting, which is more like how to efficiently extract the data, and how you can manipulate that data so it can convert into the right format that we can use behind our dashboard. And secondly, imagine that we are, whenever we talk about the data and analytics, we are talking differently from the operational databases, because there is a major difference between operational databases and the analytical databases. Because within the operational databases, you are always maintaining the latest stage. So, for example, these databases, they are running behind the applications. So whenever there's any change happen, the backend database have corresponding statements, whether it's going to be newly inserted record, it's going to be the deletion operation, it's going to be an update operation, or it's going to be merge operation. It really depends upon the logic that has been built within the application, and the backend operation happens accordingly. However, when we talk about the data and analytics, there is a big difference from the operational perspective. And why we are discussing it, because that's all going to be relevant now for us, because we are literally stepping into the data and analytics world, using the SQL as well as the Spark. So keep in mind, whenever we come into the data and analytics, although both the database looks similar, but they are completely two different world. So within the analytics, everything has been recorded. What we normally do, we maintain the history. It's not like that if any change happen, we just go and we override thing. There is no override concept within the analytics, and you, in the other word, you can call the data warehousing. So these are the concepts we're gonna see in detail. Keep in mind that these are the concepts that are highly demanded at the moment in the market as well. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna actually share with you all that knowledge that I have extracted from last 10 to 15 years working in the data and analytics space. And I'm going to actually mention where we have a fine line between the analytics and the operation. Don't get me wrong that you need to know the operational as well if you really want to excel within the data and analytics. But most of the time when we start working within the analytics space, most of our work is from the historical perspective, that we need to make sure the history has been captured and present, so we can generate some sound analytics on top of that. And that's why the complexity they come into the picture. But lots of things that we are obviously going to discuss in detail. Let's start with the very simple statement, which is obviously the first step towards our data engineering journey, and that is this writing the select statement, because tell you the truth, most of the time we have been evaluated in our interviews or in our day-to-day work about the writing the really good selection statement that can extract the required data and we can present back to the business. So select statement, like you can see the word mentioned, that word has been used to give a command to the compiler of the database engine that okay, we are expecting to get some result back from the database. And obviously if you want to understand the syntax, if you mention star, that means it's going to return you all the columns. But if you mention the column names, then it will only return you those columns. Obviously, we have two options. We can put the table name or we can put the view name, and then we have the where condition. Right now, I'm only trying to be very specific with the most simplest way, because later on we're going to actually build our base, build our knowledge on that base that we are now constructing into this lecture. So you can see we have one condition and we have multiple condition. So that's the generic syntax, a very high level overview. Now what we're gonna do, we're gonna now look obviously the same thing in the practical environment. So let me shift my environment back to the live environment, and then we'll see how we can apply the concept into practical knowledge. Let me see. Yeah, machine is up and running. Can do. Let me bring it in here. Yeah, I think that's much better way to do things. Okay, yeah, just going to. Yeah. Now you can see my screen, and I'm just waiting. So we are back into our virtual environment, which is the server base. If you remember, yesterday we have the Linux-based machine, so which is a completely different environment, and I have actually shown you how you can, with the cloud capabilities, you can access your work anywhere, whether you are on Linux machine, on Windows machine, or even you are on your company's network. I won't say on any another network, because obviously if you want to access from the external network, you still need to connect to your company network through VPN, and then you are able to access your cloud-based server. But that's the beauty of working within the cloud environment. Now, by saying it, let's come and write our first statement. There's only one difference that you can see between the Linux and this environment. Now we have the local server available in here, which obviously have more databases and more capabilities. Like I mentioned, I'm using a free tier within the Azure, and that's why, let me just close all these unnecessary scripts. I don't want to confuse you. So you can see, and if you remember in the previous video, all our MDS-based master data services-based demo, they will be based on our local instance, because I haven't actually used the Azure instance, because Azure instance costs you a fortune on every action. Now keep it in mind. But what we are going to run queries on our Azure database, Azure SQL database as well, just to show you whatever you are creating within your local environment, it's gonna run seamlessly on the Azure environment as well, because the database software is similar between the local and the Azure environment. So we are running SQL 2019 in our local environment. You can see that DB01 is SQL 19, and the Azure version of the SQL that we have actually used, that is also 2019. I don't think Microsoft has released 2022 yet into the Azure environment. The plan is, I think, later this year. So that's why we have almost similar capabilities available. Even within the Azure SQL, we have more capabilities because Microsoft has added some AI features as well that can help us to monitor and improve the performance of our Azure SQL compared to our local database server, which we are responsible to manage. Now, by saying it, coming back, and we are going to use, let me see if I have it in here. Yeah, we can use it in here. So let me just spin up my first query editor. Select star from person dot person. A very simple statement. I'm not putting anything. Like I mentioned, star means all the columns, and from means within the once you write down the table name. Generally, the way we normally do, and it's the recommended method. Always write the database name, then the schema name, and in that case, you can see my schema name is person, and within my schema person, I have another table called person with a similar name, but that the third name is referring back to the table, right? Select statement is referring to getting or retrieving the column, and in that case we are extracting all the columns. And the beauty, you can see that as soon as you hover over this star, you're going to see all the columns has been displayed. So you can press F5 if you are using SQL Server Management Studio, or you can click on the execute. They both work in a similar way. So let me just press F5. Now I have all the records which are coming to my, just bear with me, to coming on my on my result pane, and you can see that's where we normally see the results, and you can see all the columns has been displayed. So that's the whole table which has been returned as part of this query. And you can see we have all the columns and we have all the rows, and at the end you can see in the corner it is displaying the total number of rows that has been retrieved as an outcome of that query. Now, we started with a very simple flex statement, but obviously these are more like the very basic concept. Now we are going to make it a bit more complex over the time, but let's see the second version of the same statement. For example, if we want to just return the, for example, business entity ID, first name, middle name, last name, right? So if we just want to get these 4 columns, so you just need to mention the column name, and it will filter the data set based on the columns. But like we have seen, the outcome of our select statement is always a table. So like the way we can filter the column by specifying the column name, the similar way we can filter the rows as well, but that is something different from the filtering of the column. And how we can do it, we have a statement which is called where clause. And like if you remember in the slide, we have seen that after the where, we need to mention the condition that will actually evaluate, and then it will filter it out, because whatever you mention within the where clause, that will return you a logical result. And logical result, let me just write it down. I don't want to go. Is always Boolean. Now, what does it mean? It's going to be either true or it's going to be false. It cannot be both, or it cannot. Even if it is null or it's nothing, it will still consider false, right? So what the logical result mean? In our life, most some statements, we can either consider them right or wrong. So for example, if I tell you 1 is equal to 2, you're going to tell me now that statement is false, because these two numbers we are comparing, and then we are finding that whether the outcome is going to be right or wrong. So that's what we call the logical expression. Now if I write it, 5 is greater than 2, obviously you immediately told me now that is right, because our logical result is retrieving us the right. So the same way we construct the condition, and in other words, we construct the logic that will actually define our result once we write the select statement. So remember, whenever you have the question or the requirement coming from the business, look for these rules, these logical condition with all the business requests, whether it's coming for building the dashboard or building the report or even extracting the data set from maybe the data lake or big data set or small data set, right? They always provide you some sort of filtering criteria. You always need to keep an eye for these filtering criteria, and that filtering criteria will always tell you whether it's going to include the record or exclude the record. So whatever records are going to match with that filter criteria, that's going to be included in the result set. Those records which are not going to be a match with the criteria, they will be excluded by the query engine. Now coming back to our first where condition, if you remember in our previous videos, we have used person type a lot in terms of generating the data for our cloud-based database. Like if you remember, we literally run the end-to-end solution where we loaded a certain person type data within our cloud environment. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use the same type. And by the way, if I want to see the unique value of a column, what I can do, I can provide distinct and then the column name. What that will do, it will just provide so the unique value, the set of unique value will be returned to us, right? So for example, out of 19,972 records, if we only have, let's say, 5 or 10 unique values which have been repeated over the time with different rows, we're only going to get the 5 or 10 unique records. So let's run this one. Now you can see we have 6 unique values in the as a person type within our whole data set, and our whole data set length is 19,000 plus records, right? So keep that in mind. What I'm going to do, so for example, business is asking me, okay, I'm only interested to see the business entity ID, first name, middle name, and last name for those person whose person type is SC. So we will say no problem. Person type is equal to SC. Now, keep in mind, like I mentioned, now you can evaluate the following rule on this statement. Now, what we are going to do, we'll evaluate our person type. Okay. For example, we got our first row and the person type was SC. So now the row which has the value under person type column as SC and it is equal to SC. So that's going to be matched. That's going to give us the result as true. So that record is going to be included. Next record we got, and for example, we have the person type IN. Now, when query engine is going to replace the value in here and it's going to evaluate that whether IN is equal to SC, we're going to get the result. No, it's not true. So it's not going to be included. So let's run it. Cool. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to now include the person type as well, just to show you that we are not getting anything else except person type. And you can see we only have 753 records and all the records are coming as S3. Now, what I mentioned in the start, the beauty of the the SQL running locally and in the cloud, especially from the script perspective. Most of the statement they're gonna run without any issue. Like you can literally copy and paste the script within the cloud environment, and it will work. So just give you the quick demo. We have built these against our local server. Now what I'm going to do, let me copy it, and that's my cloud database. How? So one thing I need to check, because in my cloud, the database name is tab. So whenever you get an error, you're gonna see these red squiggly lines under those clauses which are not recognized by the compiler. So database is immediately going to give you the error. So because in our cloud environment, my database name is different from my local environment, which is better. So at least we know which environment we are working on. So let me just replace it. Okay, all good. So let me first run it. Now you can see we have 1026 record, because if you remember in my last video, we loaded only two 2% types, and the next statement is going to validate that hypothesis. There we go. We have EM and SC, and obviously the last statement is going to be, so we have SC. Now imagine, if you remember, if I have the IN, if I try to IN against my cloud, first let me show you in here. We have 18,484 record, but if I try to run it in the cloud, I'm not going to get anything, because the reason we haven't loaded the person type IN data within our Azure SQL. And if you remember the business rule that the person type has been controlled by the business through MDS, so they decide that which person type should go into the cloud database. So that's a very simple where clause that you can use to retrieve to filter the data when you are extracting the data from the table. So I hope that video would be beneficial, and it will help you to understand a very basic select statement, how we write the select statement. And obviously in the later video, we're going to actually complicate it a little bit further. If you have any question, or if you want to ask learn any concept that I haven't covered from the database perspective, feel free to put the comment. I'm more than happy to record the video. Otherwise, stay tuned for the similar thing within this Spark environment.